welcome to Story Focus. Here, stories come to life. We journey through captivating tales together. Whether you're here to relax, learn, or escape into another world, there's a story waiting for you. Let's dive in. Anaxagoras was another philosopher who could not agree that one particular basic substance, water, or instance, might be transformed into everything we see in the natural world. Nor could he accept that earth, air, fire, and water can be transformed into blood and bone. Anaxagoras held that nature is built up of an infinite number of minute particles invisible to the eye. Moreover, everything can be divided into even smaller parts, but even in the minute parts, there are fragments of all other things. If skin and bone are not a transformation of something else, there must also be skin and bone without the milk we drink and the food we eat. A couple of present-day examples can perhaps illustrate Anaxagoras' line of thinking. Modern laser technology can produce so-called holograms. If one of these holograms depicts a car, for example, and the hologram is fragmented, we will see a picture of the world car even though we only have the part of the hologram that shows the bumper. This is because the whole subject is present in every tiny part. In a sense, our bodies are built up in the same way. If I loosen the skin cell from my finger, the nucleus will contain not only the characteristic of my skin, the same cell will also reveal what kind of eyes I have, the color of my hair, the number and type of my fingers, and so on. Every cell of the human body carries a blueprint of the way all the other cells are constructed. So there is something of everything. In every single cell, the whole exists. In each tiny part, Anaxagoras called these minuscule particles which have something of everything in themselves. Remember that Empedocles taught that it was love that joined the elements together in whole bodies. Anaxagoras also imagined order, also a kind of force, creating animals and humans, flowers and trees. He called this force might or intelligence. Anaxagoras is also interesting because he was the first philosopher we hear of in Athens. He was from Asia Minor, but he moved to Athens at the age of 40. He was later accused of atheism and was ultimately forced to leave the city. Among other things, he said that the sun was not a god but a red-hot stone bigger than the entire Peloponnesian Peninsula. Anaxagoras was generally very interested in astronomy. He believed that all heavenly bodies were made of the same substance as Earth. He reached this conclusion after studying a meteorite. This gave him the idea that there could be human life on other planets. He also pointed out that the moon has no light of its own. Its light comes from Earth. Said he thought up an explanation for solar eclipses as well. P.S. Thank you for your attention, Sophie. It is not unlikely that you will need to read this chapter 2 or 3 times before you understand it all. But understanding will always require some effort. You probably wouldn't admire a friend who was good at everything if it cost her no effort. The best solution to the question of basic substance and the transformations in nature must wait until tomorrow, when we will meet Democritus. I'll say no more. Sophie sat in the den, looking out into the garden through a little hole in the dense thicket. She had to try and sort out her thoughts after all she had learned. It was as clear as daylight that plain water could never turn into anything other than ice or steam. Water couldn't even turn into a watermelon, because even watermelons consisted of more than just water. But she was only sure of that because that's what she had learned. Would she be absolutely certain, for example, that ice was only water if that wasn't what she had learned? At least she would have to have studied very closely how water froze to ice and melted again. Sophie tried once again to use her own common sense and not to think about what she had learned from others. From a night that refused to accept the idea of change in any form, and the more she thought about it, the more she was convinced that, in a way, he had been right. His intelligence could not accept that something could suddenly transform itself into something completely different. It must have taken quite a bit of courage to come right out and say, because it meant denying all the natural changes that people could see for themselves. Lots of people must have laughed at him, and Empedocles must have been pretty smart too, when he proved that the world had to consist of more than one single substance that made all the transformation nature possible without anything actually changing. The old Greek philosopher had found that out just by reasoning. Of course, he had studied nature, but he didn't have the equipment to do chemical analysis the way scientists do nowadays. Sophie was not sure whether she really believed that the source of everything actually was earth, air, fire, and water. But after all, what did that matter? In principle, Empedocles was right. The only way we can accept the transformations we can see with own eyes without losing our reason is to admit the existence of more than one single basic substance. Sophie found philosophy doubly exciting because she was able to follow all the ideas by using her own common sense without having to remember everything she had learned at school. She decided that philosophy was not something you can learn, but perhaps you can learn to think philosophically.